Kilkenny against Waterford this weekend. Are you impressed with how Kilkenny bounced back or have bounced back in recent times with that performance against Dublin, because they were very dominant?
Look, the league so far, from a Kilkenny perspective, that they have had one serious game against Tipperary. I mean, the games against Antrim was a difficult enough match in the weather conditions, and they won it fair enough. Now, it's not easy to go up to Cork Park and win a game. The games against Laois and Dublin, Kilkenny were very dominant, won in a canter. Now, I kind of expected that win handy enough against Laois, although talking to the Laois mentors before the match, I thought they were up for a bit of a battle, to be honest about it. They seemed to indicate that to me when I saw the lads. And but they didn't. They just never. They were never at the races, and the game was over at half time. I thought Dublin would bring something to the game, really, And I know, in fairness to Micheál Donoghue, they're missing a few players and all of that, but still, Dublin were awful in the first half. Now, Kilkenny looked good, but I mean, you have to balance that against what the opposition is providing. So I think so far so good for Kilkenny. There's still obviously a number of players to come back. We haven't seen Mikey Butler or Hugh Lawler for quite a while. Obviously haven't seen TJ Reid. And there's not newer players are maybe not breaking through so much other than Billy Drennan. So a lot of it is going to be, as you were last year, I think, by and large, with Kilkenny going forward.
And are expectations muted at the moment, I suppose, ever since that Tipperary performance?
I should look at expectations in Kilkenny are always, we can win the All-Ireland or we want to win the All-Ireland. I mean, Kilkenny got to the All-Ireland last year. People perhaps were not expecting it, but they're better and deserving the fight. But it was still a case of, what might have been. It was tight enough. So this year there is some expectations there, but I think in fairness, Derek will be cut a bit of slack here as he tries to mould the team. But I can't see a whole lot of difference in it. Now, that the caveat there is that given the tight and closeness of all the games in proximity, you could lose players to injuries, and that will mean that's why you need a panel of 26 plus to be able to draw from and be comfortable that any one of the 26, or certainly from 16 to 25 beyond, can equally come in on any given day and do what's expected of them.
Richard, or Joe Butler says, does Nickey think Richie Hogan will get a run out this weekend? He was named an unused substitute last weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And I asked Derek last weekend, and the last 2 weekends, he's probably fed up me asking the question about Richie Hogan. To be quite honest about it, if Richie Hogan doesn't get some game time this weekend, it's hard to see how he's going to be a contributor in the championship. Now, if Kilkenny are fortunate enough to get a draw this weekend, they will have a home semi-final against Cork. Now, I know Derek King would certainly like that. It's not somebody from within the Leinster Championship campaign. Cork was the ideal game to get. They're on a high. They've led their group, and it's the perfect game for Kilkenny. And I know Derek would love that coming into the championship. He has Westmeath in the first match, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to the Midlanders, but it's a game he should be marking down as a winning. So the Cork game would be very important to him. Now, getting to a league final is something his attitude is, we keep winning as much as we can and let the rest take care of itself. So I do think there's a hope in Kilkenny, and so far so good. But I think the caution is that Kilkenny have not really been tested in the league so far, apart from the Tipperary game where we came out second best. There's no question about that. And yes, Sunday will be a stiffer test. Waterford, Davy Fitzgerald will not come up to Kilkenny wanting to just lose the game. He will have issues. He'll probably can't play Gleeson or Prunty because of injuries last weekend, so he probably won't risk them. And maybe some more of them have knocks. So, but at the same time, these are always great opportunities for players who are trying to break through onto the team to come in, and there's no better place than Nolan Park, which is in effect, it is a home game for Watford, but because of the redevelopment of Walsh Park, they've conceded home advantage on this occasion, and Kilkenny will owe them this match down the line.
And do we have to be fair about it with that game against Tipperary and say you didn't have the Ballyhale Shamrocks lads? So I mean, Owen Cody comes in, he scores 2-2 the last day. We know what TJ Reid's going to do later in the year, Adrian Mullen, so on and so forth. These are serious players when it comes to the Kilkenny team.
I know, that's fine. I think that's a fair point as well. And we would have said that look, we have to be conscious of the fact that there's quite a lot of players missing, apart from Shamrocks Ballyhale, as there's a few other players missing as well. And that is the league. And that's what Derek wanted to do during the league, to give opportunities to newer players, some of the lads from the under-21 All-Ireland winning team of last year as well. So no, that's a fair comment, and I think we have to understand that when analysing Kilkenny's performances. But look, so far so good. It has been a steady league, and I think Kilkenny generally would be happy. I think he'd love to get into the league semi-final, and will take the league final if it's there as well. But at the same time, a match against Cork in Nolan Park would be a great preparation for the championship and would be ideal, even if that was to be the last league game. But they have to at least get it. They need to draw with Waterford on Sunday to make that happen.
Against Tipperary, the game, of course, got away from him once the red card happened for Jamie Barron. But overall, what are your thoughts on Waterford?
Yeah, I thought for a long time I thought that they were in with a right good shout last week. But it happened for Tipperary better in the second half. I think Tipperary's fitness level is at a much higher, it's much more advanced than any of the teams at the moment in the division that they're playing in. Now I've seen in the other games in the other division, I've seen them on TV and that. But Tipp looked very fit. Certainly Liam Cahill has managed to get his players together as soon as he was appointed and laid out fitness programs and training regimes for them over the winter time, and they look very sharp. And he's obviously going with a couple of new players and some good players. Garrod O'Connor has excelled with the University of Limerick. I like Conor Bowe as well, and he's getting a lot out of the players who've been around for a while as well. They're rejuvenated, like Ronan Marr and Seamus Kennedy, and just to mention a few. And I think the likes of Mike Breen and Michael Breen and players like that, they're kind of rejuvenated now under Cahill, and he knows a lot of those from his underage days in Tipperary as well, so they're not strange to him. They know his style, and he has really hit the ground running there in Tipperary. I suppose with Waterford, you would have been disappointed if you're from Waterford the way they fell away last week. And I suppose, in a way, what the weekend's game against Kilkenny, they need to get back on the horse, as it were. And it would serve them well. Waterford would have no problem getting into a league semi-final. Now, I know they would be up against Cork, and it mightn't be the ideal arrangement if you're playing somebody from your own province. That's why it's probably, from Kilkenny's point of view, it's ideal because they're not from the province. But I think Waterford will come to Kilkenny with plenty of fire in their bellies. Davy is not one to want to lose again, because you start losing 2 games in a row in the league to big players like Tipperary and Kilkenny. You know, maybe doubts set in about the players, doubts set in with selectors. They say they have to play around with the selection and all of that. So, I think they'll be up for this weekend, Waterford, because it's important to the best preparation you have for the championship is to stay winning in the league, in my view. And but they would have been disappointed the way Tipp ran riot more or less in the latter stages. But I was very impressed by Tipp. They looked extraordinarily sharp. But I think that Waterford were not at their best last weekend, and they'll be looking for a big uplift on Sunday in Nolan Park.
Yeah, like a lot of teams have their injury issues at the moment, and maybe that's a byproduct of everyone's trying to take the man on and burst through traffic in the middle and so on and so forth. So there's a lot more collisions. But like Waterford, so far this year, Stephen Bennett, who's an excellent player, he hasn't scored from play at all this year. Austin Gleeson, this was his first start against Tipperary, and like he's still their top scorer despite not starting up until that point. He had to go off injured. Conor Prunty, Mikey Kiley's been injured, and he was red carded before that. And they have a lot of red cards. I think it's is it 4 and 5 games or 4 and 4 games, something like that as well. Even their setup. I mean, I was looking at it a few times. Desi Hutchinson was standing over in the corner flag trying to create space, where I'm thinking you should be trying to create opportunities for him, not space. So I don't know what. There's an awful lot of things that need to come right for Waterford at the moment.
Yeah, well, time is running out now. I mean, the championship is not that far away. It's only a number of weeks away, and you're going to have the last round of league games this weekend. And that now, that can suit some counties, because they can then get straight into Dungarvan in Waterford's case now, and they can really get going among the squad and start working hard on the training and working on the sort of tactical stuff that you've just alluded to that's not quite working for them, and working on that. Sometimes during the course of the league, if you're trying out players, you can be doing it for 2 purposes. One, to see what players are going to make it, but also maybe to trim your squad a bit as well. That's unfortunately what league can be used for also. So they have work to do to get those right. And Davy is back, and it's his first year. He knows some of those players, but not them all. And he has a bit of work to do now. But I still think Watford are a serious contender, and that's why losing 2 games in a row can mentally be something that would impact the team. So that's he has to work on that, and he has to try and get back his best players. I mean, mean, Stephen Bennett, you've alluded to, they're not scoring, Austin Gleeson being out, and he has to address the red card situation because, you can't ignore it. It's not that as if one referee was particularly hard on him. I mean, they have had an issue around the whole disciplinary side, and it's something they have to address because that scale of indiscipline in the championship, and there's only going to be one outcome.
Yeah, absolutely true. And so do you see Kilkenny winning this one?
I think Kilkenny have a little bit more to play for in the sense that they know that a game against Cork would really set them up for the Leinster Championship campaign, whatever is to happen in that particular match. I think Cork will bring a style to Nolan Park. If that was to be a fixture, that would probably suit Kilkenny, and they can really have a right go off one another. And I think Cork would be thrilled to get that game as well, because Kilkenny would be the ideal opposition for Cork at this stage, because they have developed extremely well. They've developed a style of play, and again, Pat Ryan has brought in a number of new players who are making an impact, and he still has a few experienced guys out there as well to give game time to. So it would be a very interesting clash if it was to happen, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves because Sunday's game is an important game for two counties, and I won't say it's going to define their season, but certainly from a Kilkenny point of view, they'd love to get to the semi-final. And from a Waterford point of view, they just have to get back on the horse again now. They've slipped a bit in the last while. And Davy has a bit of work to do to get them over the line against Kilkenny, but he has such a passion when he plays Kilkenny. I mean, his eyes open up and he smiles when he walks into Nolan Park, and going to be a big change for this time, because when he looks down the sideline, he won't be seeing a Brian Cody that has really motivated him over many years. He'll see Derek Ling for the first time on the sideline. And it'll be interesting to see the choreography between the two of those lads.
Yeah, and like you mentioned Cork there, and I agree with you. I think Cork would love a match at Nolan Park just to kind of test their mettle. But I remember talking to John Myler a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how the impact and the legacy of those strikes, and how Cork started losing these games narrowly. Like those real tight games coming down to the last 5 minutes, they started losing them. How important was it to them, well, so far in this league, that they've come from behind to beat Limerick, albeit Limerick emptied the bench that day, but then even against Wexford, that they didn't lead until injury time, but the manner in which they did it, maybe this is big for belief down on Lee's side.
I know that's true, and that's something that will resonate with when Pat Ryan has those guys in training. I'm sure he has been telling them to literally stay going to the final whistle. Now we can say, if you stay going to the final whistle, these are the sort of things that can happen. I mean, a game now is generally could be 75 or 76 minutes. So it could be that the vital score could come in the 75th minute to win the game. So that's why it's and often that doesn't dawn on players. I mean, you might switch off; it's only the league, but for the mental preparation for the team and to build real belief in the team, winning those matches and the manner in which you win those matches can be very important to the team. Psychologically, it can work as well for the management team, because they can now point to how necessary it is to keep going, and not just at the end of the game, but even coming up to half time, maybe get a vital score before half time, and it could swing the game, and mentally you're going into the dressing room in a much more positive frame of mind. So that's why it will be helpful to Cork, the manner in which they have achieved those wins, and they sit, as I said, on top of the table with 8 points, and they haven't been the leading scorers in the division, because Clare have, because of their big win over Wexford. In fairness, that kind of inflates their scores, but nevertheless, Cork have had an impressive 106 points scored across their 4 league games so far.
And to be fair to Pat Ryan, he hasn't been afraid to use the younger players. I'm looking at some of the ones that lined out against Wexford. I mean, Owen Downey's very young, Owen Roach is in there, Ethan Toomey, Kieran Joyce is in his second season, Tommy O'Connell, and so on and so forth. Pádraig Power up in full forward got himself a nice goal when he was wrestling with the big man Matt O'Hanlon. Like, this is quite impressive to be digging this deep in terms of like going to the youth, and that they are performing.
Yeah, but Shane, that shouldn't surprise you, because a lot of those players were winning All-Ireland under-20 titles a couple of years ago. So, I mean, and Pat Ryan knows about them. So the age of the county hurler now is much younger. You're seeing a lot of those top-class players playing inter-county at 21, 2, 3, 4. And while there are older players, those guys at that age are very comfortable in the senior ranks now. So, I mean, if Ryan has worked with those at under 20 level, he knows them very well, just like Liam Cahill knows the Tipperary underage players. He's had success with them also. So when you feel confident about those, and you can, it's easy to bring them on to the next level. And And yes, they have a lot of learning to do. But games against the likes of Limerick and Tipperary and Kilkenny and those are the sort of games that will bring on those younger players. And that's why if there was to be a game in Nolan Park, Cork would relish the opportunity to pit those players against Kilkenny, even if it's Kilkenny with a couple of new players. But it's the sight of playing a black and amber jersey would obviously be mentally challenging for those players and would be the ideal preparation. But as I say, we need to wait to talk about that one next week.
And then Limerick, they really haven't taken too much of a step back, have they? Obviously, and then Wexford will probably be looking for a good performance this weekend. They beat Limerick at home last year in the league.
Now, I think Limerick are in very good shape. I think they're prepared well. They've had their warm weather training, so everybody is back in the panel. I think John Kiley will be delighted at the way things have gone. Wexford will be looking for a good performance. I mean, the result it's a dead rubber from that perspective, other than that. Certainly after losing, and they played pretty well against Cork now. Wexford could really have seen out that game. But after the mauling against Clare, they needed something to recover from. And they are getting back a lot of their players now. Lee Chin was back, Rory O'Connor is back, maybe a couple of more. So they'll be looking to the Limerick game as the final preparation before they start out in the championship, the final big game before they go into their own Wexford Park to do really serious training for the next couple of weeks for the championship. So they'll see the Limerick game as ideal from that perspective. And it's a dead rubber, of course. But John Kelly will not want Limerick to be losing. He'll want them to stay winning. And they're probably in pole position maybe to get to the league final. But to be honest about it, it'll be a right cracking game between themselves and Tipperary in the semi-final. That'll be a decent game now.
Yeah, definitely. I think Tipperary would like that, just a game against Limerick, just to sort of test themselves, feel them out a little bit. And I'd say John Kiley wouldn't mind feeling out what a Tipperary team under Liam Cahill is like.